It's NBA Draft Day. We are here with you on the Just Basketball Show. Before we get to our last-minute preview coverage of the NBA Draft tonight, Wes Goldberg, a quick question. Obviously, I just prefaced our show by lining up and setting up what is a very fun day for basketball fans. So I have a very simple one for you, which is, what's your favorite draft day memory? This can be based on fandom. This can be something insane that happened. This can be a surprise, a suit maybe that you really you look back fondly on. What is your favorite NBA draft day memory?
You say a soup?
Suit. Like LeBron
suit.
With the white, or, Jalen Rose. Yeah. Maybe you had a great soup. I mean, I don't know what you're eating on Wednesday. What are you eating on Wednesday night? What are you going to be cooking up?
Not soup. I'm generally not a soup guy, but we'll leave that for another time.
All right. Different cold open for Friday. We'll do that. Favorite soups.
There's two things. I've got a favorite memory, and that's the 2003 draft. That's essentially the draft that got me into the draft. That was the LeBron, Carmelo, Chris Bosh, obviously Dwayne Wade. Growing up a Miami Heat fan, he's the player that captured my basketball imagination. So I look back on that, but obviously I didn't know that the Heat were going to be taking Dwayne Wade where they did. To me, it was all the intrigue around LeBron and Carmelo at the top of the draft. I thought that was just the most interesting thing. I was all in on it. I was a big NFL draft junkie growing up as a kid, and this is the thing that got me into the NBA draft. So that's like the first one. My least favorite draft day memory is when I was covering the Warriors, and Klay Thompson, the day of the draft in Orange County during a pickup basketball game, tore his Achilles. And that threw my entire day for a loop. What is supposed to be a thing that I had been preparing for weeks in terms of the NBA draft, the Warriors, another lottery pick in the second straight year. And I'm like, oh, yeah, here we go. Like, I've been preparing for this draft for months now. And then Klay Thompson goes and tears his Achilles. Obviously worse for him than it was for me, but it really didn't make my day any easier either. And it took that whole season for a loop. And that was probably my least favorite memory.
I personally did not have a lot of I wasn't a draft watcher much until I got like really into the NBA, and then shortly after that I was blogging and doing all sorts of content stuff around it, so then it kind of is a given. So I don't have a lot of memories of being a fan and just like letting it kind of wash over me.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that the 2013 draft just stands out, just because of the uncertainty. The Suns were involved, so I had a kind of local idea. The Nerlens Noel fall, just it felt chaotic. Maybe that's on my mind because this year's figures to be fairly similar. But it is fun when you just have no real idea if any of the players are going to hit and what order they're going to fall in, and it's like the spirit of what this whole thing is, where you're just kind of letting it all wash over to you. But I think 2003, the really good ones, I would honestly throw more recently 2022 in there, where we didn't really know what the first pick was going to be and what the top three was really going to look like. And then all of a sudden, Paolo's going number one. Those types are obviously fun too, and it's a lot of great talent, and you're kind of waiting to see how it maps out. But I guess the chaos of 2013 is the one that really sticks with me, where I was just, as a fan, sitting there laughing at all of it.
I do wonder if we're going to have another 2022 type moment this year, where going into that draft with the Magic, the number one pick, everybody's, well, they love Jabari Smith Jr. Every mock draft had Jabari Smith Jr. at the top, and then they go and say, you know what, we think Paolo Banchero has been the best player in college basketball all year long. We're going to go ahead and take that guy. And we started getting some reporting out of it, and then the conflicting reporting, the Woj versus Shams stuff, like all that kind of stuff was starting to happen the day of the draft. And then they go ahead and take Paolo number one. I wonder if we're going to have a very similar moment here, because every mock draft has Risacher at the top going to the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks have been rumored to maybe even trade this pick. It wouldn't shock me if we had some chicanery and some surprises early on in this one.
Absolutely. All right. Today, a reverse draft, starting with players and picking teams as we get ready for tonight's first round. And we got a couple takes to get off of our chests here as we look toward draft night as well, all coming up on today's Just Basketball Show.
Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. Oh, LeBron James.
Welcome in to the Wednesday, June 26th edition of the Just Basketball Show. I'm Brendon Kleen. That over there is Wes Goldberg. We're back for a second time this week. We're here for you 3 times a week, giving you a dose of all things hoops. Follow, rate, review if you haven't already on your favorite audio app. We're also free here on YouTube for you. Follow us across social media, TikTok, Instagram, X. We got content coming out for you daily over there as well. We got a lot to hit on. It is draft day. It is the first round of the draft day at the very least. And so we're going to hit all the lottery prospects one by one, get some big picture takes out of the way. Should be a fun show. Today's episode is supported by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code JustBasketball. Get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager at BetMGM. Here is how it works. Step 1, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using the code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you will receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure to use the bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Alrighty, Wes. Lay out for us, this was your idea, what exactly this reverse mock draft is, how it will look, and what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so it's the reverse draft of the lottery teams, so the top 14. So instead of doing a mock draft like everybody else does, which is boring, and it doesn't matter, and everybody's going to be wrong anyway, so who cares, where you just go from the number 1 pick with the Atlanta, and you can go all the way through the lottery to number 14 at Portland and say, well, this is what I think is going to be the player that this team takes. Again, everybody's wrong. Doesn't matter. Don't care. It's boring. I've seen a million of them. What you haven't seen is what we're about to do. What we're about to do is take the top.
You've never seen it.
Never seen anything even close to it. It's a completely novel idea. This is our IP. It is the top. We're going to take the top 14 players in the draft, according to ESPN's big board. And then we're going to, as those players, draft lottery teams that those players ought to want to play for because of fit or whatever reason. So
yep.
I'll go through the order. We've got,
okay.
Or I'll go through the players, and then I'll tell
yep.
you what teams that we have. So the top 14 players, according to ESPN's big board. Zacharie Risacher, Alex Sarr, Donovan Clingan, Sheppard, Buzelis, Stephon Castle, Dalton Knecht, Rob Dillingham, Tidjane Salaun, Nikola Topic, Cody Williams, Devin Carter, Holland, and Jacoby Walter. So those are the top 14 players that we're working with. The teams, obviously, Atlanta, Washington, Houston, San Antonio, twice. So they still get 2 picks. Detroit, Charlotte, Portland, twice. Memphis, Utah, Chicago, OKC, and Sacramento. So those are the teams that these players are allowed to pick. We'll start at the top with Risacher. I don't know. We haven't decided who goes first yet.
Want to arm wrestle?
Sure.
All right, I'll let you go first. No, I'll go first. You laid it out. My turn to talk. Zacharie Risacher. What's funny is, like, even going in order here, it kind of feels funny, right? Because it's like, I mean, is he the top guy? But
right.
We'll start with him. Wing feels safe. Feels like a player who, at the very least, feels like he has a high floor. So I that almost makes me want to put him on a team that's already good, Wes. Like, that's kind of where my head goes, is like actually not on a Washington or a San Antonio or something, but more so on a team that can just kind of plug and play. But I also kind of want to save teams here because I like other fits better. Risacher, because he's a little safe, doesn't thrill me, whereas there's some teams that are in that already good mold where I'm like, I want to have some more fun there.
Yeah, but you're Risacher. You've got the first pick. You're not saving teams. You got to act out of your own interests.
I know. I got to be selfish with it, but part of that is like fit, right? Like, where am I actually going to play?
Exactly.
Where is it going to make sense? Okay, so with all that said, a little bit strategic. I'm also Brendon here, so I'm trying to win this thing. Like, I just got to be honest about that.
Is there going to be a winner and loser on this?
I'm feeling competitive, so yes, I think there is. I mean, I don't know if we're going to do a crowd vote or anything, but I want to get fits I like, not just, I don't care about Zacharie Risacher. What do I care? So, all right. Portland Trailblazers.
Really?
Portland Trailblazers.
Huh.
I just look at their roster. They don't have wings.
Yeah.
Fair. And they're bad. So I'm going to get reps. I'm going to probably start. I'm going to be able to have the ball, shoot. It's a developmental situation. I actually think Chauncey Billups is somewhat of a decent defensive coach, given that he's been able to get something out of that roster. I mean, Jeremy Grant might not be on this team for much longer, so there will be reps opening up even beyond that on the wing forward spots. So it's kind of the perfect combination of a team that has some guard play and some bigs, and I can just kind of slot in there. But I'm also going to have opportunities to get better, make myself look good, develop everything else. And then again, from my standpoint, Portland's still there. They got 2 of these. So I'm not crossing them off to go back to them if I, as Brendon, want to do that later on.
Well, if you were acting in Risacher's best interests, I do wonder if you would have just picked San Antonio to go hang out with your friend Victor Wembanyama as the 2 Frenchmen. But the Portland pick I like, right? It makes a whole lot of sense. You've got guys on ball, so you don't have to, if there's a slight against Risacher, it's that he's not going to really do a whole lot on the ball early or maybe ever in his NBA career. Mm-hmm. In Portland, ostensibly, you wouldn't have to worry about that because that's Scoot's job, and your job is to play off of Scoot. So I have no problem with it. Portland, congrats. You get Risacher.
The San Antonio thing real quick, just to cover that, right? Because I think that makes a lot of sense. And, of course, I know the French thing is only a part of it. They do sort of need wings, but the weird thing about the Spurs, because they've been bad for a while now, is like they're in this point where they have guys everywhere. Yeah. They're not exactly a hole. They're not a filled hole away from getting better. So
it feels like
that's the issue.
It feels like they might be bad again, but then again, what if Victor Wembanyama is one of the 10 best players in the league already?
Yeah. And I think what they need to do is just like get vets that happen to maybe play the same spot as a Jeremy Sohan or a Keldon Johnson, but they're just better than those guys. Whereas Risacher's not that. So there we go. What do we got next here? You are picking for Alex Sarr.
Alex Sarr. You took Portland off the board. I wouldn't have loved that pick anyway, so I'm not worried. And Portland has another one anyway. So I'm going with the Sacramento Kings for Alex Sarr. I like the fit a lot there. You got a defensive-minded guy in Sarr who's been compared to Nick Claxton, Evan Mobley, these kinds of guys, with as maybe the third star next to 2 not so defensively inclined players in Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. It just feels like Sarr can walk in right away and make a real impact there. You still got Keegan Murray there. Maybe they move off of Harrison Barnes and stuff like that, but that, to me, just makes a lot of sense as a fit. And to your point earlier, and I think it's a really good one, if you're a rookie, hey, I can walk into a situation where I'm competing, at least in the play-in tournament mix with the Sacramento Kings. Great coach in Mike Brown. I know that he's going to have me dialed in as a rookie. I'm going Alex Sarr. If I'm Alex Sarr, I'm picking the Sacramento Kings for myself here.
I love that. I mean, if I'm the Kings, I'm thinking backflips. Everybody related to Alex Sarr. That is the best version or one of the high-end outcomes of Alex Sarr, with the way that he can fill space defensively, the fact that he can space the floor on the other end. He has a little bit of feel with the ball. You could imagine him playing up-tempo. His best moments often on highlights and everything were those transition plays. The theoretical version of Sarr would be everything you would want next to Domantas Sabonis. I mean, he's a more kind of mobile, fluid version of Miles Turner, which was, Sabonis' partner for a really long time. So I love that. That's
more
perfect.
Dynamic defensively too, right? Than even a Miles Turner.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say a better version of Trey Lyles. But hey,
he is
also
too. He's also a much better. Hopefully, if you're picking him second, like Washington in the real draft figures they're about to do, he's going to be a lot better than Trey Lyles. But okay, number 3,
Donovan.
According to ESPN, Donovan Clingan. I'm not gonna reinvent the wheel here. I'm gonna pick not chalk, but I'm gonna go to a team that, if I'm Donovan Clingan, I've already been linked to out there in the world, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies.
That's what I meant. Yeah, this one's too easy. Don't overthink it. Yep, perfect fit.
Yeah, chalk. It could end up being chalk, right? They might trade up here. They're trying to trade up. They like him. He's perfect on the court with Jaren Jackson. At center in lineups with Jaren on the bench. He's young. He can get better. They're still young, even though they have a little bit of pressure to win. They want to be a defense-first team. Pick and roll with Ja. I mean, it really writes itself. If they trade up and this happens, I can already tell you on Friday morning I'm going to be praising them in our next show. So like this is everything they need.
Doesn't it feel like we're going in that direction where Houston isn't enamored with anybody at 3? They've been linking themselves to Donovan Clingan through media reports over and over, trying to get somebody to trade up for this thing. It sounds like San Antonio might be doing that too a little bit. I don't know. But if Memphis is there at 9, Houston is there at 3, it makes a lot of sense for that swap to happen, for Houston to trade down, get a few more assets. And they've also been linked to, of course, Marcus Smart, who is an Ime Udoka guy from their days at Boston. Is there something there that just makes some sense? It's one of those things that's so easy to predict that it feels like it's not going to happen because it feels like it's too obvious. But, hey, sometimes obvious stuff does happen in the NBA. I love the pick. I love it for Clingan. I love it for Memphis. High fives all around on that one. Reed Sheppard.
Real quick, Memphis, I just like the one thing, and maybe it happens by the time this comes out so we don't have to spend a bunch of time on it, but Marcus Smart being the only price of that move up, that's kind of what we're hearing as of Tuesday night right now. That feels like not enough. So if I'm Houston, I'm like, great, but you've been choreographing that you want Clingan for months. It's been in everybody's reporting. You're going to have to do a little better than Marcus Smart, who is like a vet that's already paid a lot of money and is pretty much the same guy as Dillon Brooks in a lot of ways, which we already have on our roster. So
is it you need to get the salary going back too, right? So what if you just sent back Dillon Brooks to Memphis? What if Houston was just over Dillon Brooks in a year, which entirely possible, and they're just like, you know what? You can have your toy back. We don't want this anymore. Give us Marcus Smart. Let's just kind of reset this whole thing.
Back to Memphis, Smart, back to Udoka's warm embrace. It feels perfect. Let's do it. But also, I think the Grizzlies truly do need to give a little more. All right, what do you got for Reed Sheppard?
So this one's a little tough because I like Reed Sheppard a lot. Awesome lights-out shooter, competes defensively, does the little things. My favorite landing spot for him in terms of fit, if I was going to do this strategically like you did at the top, would be Detroit, because I just think he makes a ton of basketball sense there. I think you could start him day one. And I think the Pistons need a little bit of chutzpah. I think they need a little bit of culture in that whole kind of situation there. And Reed Sheppard, I like that. He's got that dog in him, and I think they just need players like that. But I'm not going to do that to Reed Sheppard. I'm not going to banish him to Detroit. I'm not doing that to him. Instead, I'm going to banish him to Utah. I don't know if that's much better, but I like the fit there also. If you're going to go Keontae George, Reed Sheppard, two sort of point guards, but not really, but I kind of like that. You got awesome shooting on the perimeter. It feels like Sheppard can kind of go in and do the same thing that you would project him to do in Detroit, where it feels like Utah is still a little aimless, and they just need a guy in that locker room that just says, this is my team now, and I don't really care who else is around. I like that star power potential that Sheppard brings, but I really like if you had to pick a spot between Will Hardy's Utah Jazz and Blank's Detroit Pistons, I'm gonna go with the coach who I also trust to get the most out of me.
Blanks. Yeah.
So I'm going to Utah if I'm Reed Sheppard. I'm picking the Jazz.
So this is just you saving the Spurs because you have other players you like there better.
Sort of, but I also, if I'm Reed Sheppard, I don't want to go to San Antonio. Why do I want to go there? I can do it. Like, I'm not going to be the star. I'm not going to be. That's Victor Wembanyama's team. It feels like there's not a whole lot of support on the perimeter there to make up for what I don't do well.
Fair.
And maybe there's not
if
a whole
I'm
lot
Reed
of support
Sheppard
in Utah
though
either. But
I know Stephon Castle's been getting the highlights as like the grumpy guy who wants to only be a point guard, and
yeah.
We'll talk about him in a minute, but if I'm Reed Sheppard, I probably think I'm a point guard.
Yeah.
So that's what we've all been saying the Spurs need for a really long time now, over a year.
Yeah.
I could be that. I might want to go there, and especially like all I'm competing with is Trey Jones and like Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley, who have been pretty bad for their first couple of years in the NBA. Like, I don't know. It's right there for me if I can prove that I am.
So is the John
that.
Stockton template in Utah, and we know that they appreciate the John Stockton types there.
Yeah,
Salt Lake City. So there's a little bit of that here.
That's where I thought you were maybe coming from there. There was a little more of a surface level scouting report that I thought we were going to be headed towards.
I kind of did just go Reed Sheppard, Utah, and I just tried to make up the reason behind it. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, great. All right. Matas Buzelis. That's where we are next year.
Yes.
How'd you feel about him talking mad shit to Shams Charania today out of nowhere? that nobody wants to face him. They don't want the Mata smoke.
I love guys like that. I don't know why. I love the arrogant, completely unself-aware player that walks into the NBA and is like, I'm the captain now. I always love guys that just have that attitude, so I kind of liked it. But I'll be really interested to see how it plays out.
There are going to be a handful of times on the court at Thomas and Mack Center here in a couple of weeks where Buzelis is going to try his absolute best to dunk all over somebody. And I'm not promising that he will succeed, but he also doesn't really have the game to kind of like back up being such a trash-talking guy because he's a little thin. He's kind of a fluid, like finesse toolsy guy rather than some sort of, overpowering athlete. So the dunking is kind of all he has to back up the talk. So I'm looking forward to seeing him try it, but try that on the wrong guy. So there's like 30-year-old centers who are trying to make a roster out there sometimes. I'm ready for it. Okay, where is he going though? I don't love Matas Buzelis as a prospect. That is part of the issue that I'm running up against as I try to find.
Matas Buzelis loves himself as a prospect, so
I know. It's
you
like,
and I think are aligned on that, though.
Where do I like him? Where would I want to go if I were him? I guess, right?
Right.
I'm going to go with the San Antonio Spurs here.
Okay. So we got one of the Spurs picks off.
I feel a little bad, like taking them up because it's Victor Wembanyama and you and I could have some fun here, but you're reminding me that we got to come at it from these dudes' perspective, so I will do that here. I just think they have a track record of getting the most out of players that are like him. Chip England's gone, but they had a shooting coach for a long time who could improve that side of things. They tend to be able to maximize players who have feel. We talked previously about Victor Wembanyama, who we want to just put as much size, turn what he is into an even bigger strength. Having somebody who's 6'10", who could potentially, can he defend threes? Even if he's a 4, that's nice. I just think that's probably the best case scenario for him to develop. But I'm not hugely optimistic. Kind of anywhere he lands, I would be worried.
I know why you picked it, and you're right. I agree. If I'm Buzelis here, I'm trying to go to San Antonio. I would have been a little interested in Detroit because it feels like they have a need at that specific position. But again, I don't know that any of these prospects are I don't even know who the coach is there right now. So they might just end up being the last pick by default here. Yeah. But I really don't like the fit in San Antonio for Buzelis because those are two real pencil-thin guys in your front court between Buzelis potentially and Victor Wembanyama. So I'm still under the mindset that the Spurs should add a real center to the roster so that Wemby doesn't have to play center full time. But that I know I might be in a minority there. But Stephon Castle is the next pick, and my favorite fit for him in the draft is different than what my answer is going to be. Because if I'm Castle, you referenced this earlier. I'm trying to tell everybody I'm a point guard. And I kind of want my own team, and I feel like that team could be Washington. So I'm going Washington here. I can walk in right away. I could play in front of or alongside Jordan Poole. That, to me, as a basketball fit, makes a lot of sense. Jordan Poole, very skilled offensive player when he's paying attention. Very bad defensive player even when he's paying attention. Stephon Castle, awesome on-ball defender, has all the tools. You won't have to rely on him to do all the playmaking, but he still can, and I think Jordan Poole could play off of him the way that Jordan Poole has played off of other players in the past. And Castle, you could talk yourself into, well, this could be my team now and all these things. Does Kyle Kuzma stick around? If he does, that's another weapon there. There's some talent there between the Denny Avdias and things like that. Corey Kispert, I could pass to him, rack up my assist numbers, stuff like that. So if I'm Stephon Castle, I'm going to the Washington Wizards.
It feels like Castle is exactly like the purpose of an exercise like this. He feels like the player who is going to be most dependent on landing in the right spot, which kind of makes it frustrating to me that he's so insistent that he's a point guard. I would understand him directing himself somewhere for that reason. But to demand that it has to be a place where I'm going to have the ball, maybe he'll bet on himself and it'll work, or maybe a team will just kind of take him anyway and talk him out of that, basically. But if he lands somewhere where they're all on board with the point guard stuff and he doesn't have a good infrastructure around him with another maybe ball handler out there or enough spacing and structure and everything, like it could get pretty ugly. So
basketball fit is Charlotte, isn't it? Where you could play off of LaMelo Ball. He's in between LaMelo and Brandon Miller on the perimeter. A ton of size across those three positions. Yeah. But he's got to really buy into understanding that it's LaMelo's team. But then again, I don't know. Like you could also just bake in 20 games missed by LaMelo Ball for injury every year, and you could be the point guard for those 20 games. I don't know. Or maybe you stagger their minutes, and Castle could run the second unit.
Sure.
It's my favorite basketball fit. If I'm Charlotte, I'm picking Castle. I'm not even questioning it. And I don't. And if he wants to throw a fit about playing point guard, we can humble him real quick as a rookie and figure it out.
Probably Utah too. I mean, kind of a similar setup with what you were just describing there, but. Yeah, I mean, we've seen, I like Washington to me is not bad though, right? Because we've seen players like Westbrook and other guys like that are just kind of balls of clay benefit from just repping it and just getting to figure out what you are as a player on the fly. And Washington, I mean, you mentioned Poole and like Kuzma's there and everything. Like, I don't know who's going to be on the team by February. So maybe it's just all him. And that, like Koulibaly kind of had that last year and he had some flashes. So maybe that's kind of all you're looking for. Okay. We are next here at Dalton Knecht. He's another one to me where if I'm him and I'm just trying to maximize what I can do on my rookie contract and what's going to kind of make me look the best, I kind of want to go to a good team or one of the better teams at the very least. Great shooter. You know, people's opinions vary of how much he'll be able to impact the game on the defensive end, and if there's a little bit more when he has the ball in his hands than we've seen. How much can he finish? All that stuff at the NBA level, given that he was just so much older than everybody else, and he's only 6'5", so not quite big wing size. But I'm going to go with the Bulls here.
Okay. That's my second choice for him.
I think the number one thing Chicago needs is just shooting. Yeah. So they have Edey now. It doesn't feel like Lonzo's going to be there very long, but Kobe White, if DeRozan's out there, a lot of their other young guys like Patrick Williams and others are sort of, they have some things that they can do, but it's all predicated on getting into space, which they've just refused to generate that space for their players. So Knecht feels to me like somebody, even if he just becomes like passable on defense and, you know, an above average shooter who maybe kind of knows what to do with the ball in his hands, like a pretty normal player. The Bulls would love to have that.
He would walk into Chicago and immediately be one of the most important players on the roster because he's the only guy who could shoot outside of Kobe White on the entire team. And Kobe White has the ball in his hands so much. I know with Josh Giddey being there, he's going to be sharing those ball handling duties quite a bit, but still. I like the pick for Dalton Knecht. Chicago, that makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't be my first spot if I was Knecht and I was picking.
Who would have been?
I didn't know. I would have went OKC. I would have been like, hey, they can always use shooting around Shea and Jalen Williams and that whole group. I can walk in and play for a team that could be in the finals next year and be like better Isaiah Joe for them. Heck yeah, I'm all in.
It does feel like we should have picked the Thunder already.
Well,
but I don't think you're going to go there next.
Yeah, just like if you're looking for a guy like Risacher, I could see maybe in Oklahoma City, but he just seems a little bit like he's not as much of a finished product. And the other guy like Clingan maybe, but this was like the first guy who feels like he would actually benefit from not having his own team. Whereas the guys like Reed and Castle and they need a little room to grow, right? They need some more runway. Rob Dillingham is the next guy on the board. I'm going San Antonio here for him. I think if I'm Dillingham, this is the perfect fit for me because I could shoot the snot out of the ball. I'm a good playmaker. I could dribble anywhere and get anywhere I want on the court. And I could be an offensive fulcrum unto myself. And all I need is two things. I need a pick and roll lob threat. And I need somebody to be able to cover up for all my deficiencies defensively. And in San Antonio, you got that in spades in Victor Wembanyama. This is not a hard decision for me. If I'm Rob Dillingham, I want San Antonio.
He is another one in this class where, you see Lou Williams comparisons. You just look at the fact that obviously he's 6'1" and very, very scrawny and only a 6'3" wingspan. he could just bust here, right? I mean, and so there's really not a place that I feel like, well, he won't bust if he goes there, because it really just is about how much can he maximize what he's good at to just carve out a career for himself. So I like the idea of a little bit more of a patient, stable organization for a player like that in general, rather than a Charlotte or a Detroit or a Washington or even Chicago, where they just are always kind of in some various stage of being a mess, you know? So I like that, but man, he's going to have to, like, I think of James Bouknight a little bit the same way. He went to Charlotte a few years ago and just kind of one of those gunner bench microwave scorer guards. And it's like, he didn't play with, high level decision making on either end. He was really small, and he was out of the league by the end of his rookie contract. Yeah. So
the problem with these
tough
small
for guys like that.
When you're small, you have to be an elite shot maker or playmaker, right? You have to be absolutely elite at those things. And if you're not, I mean, for every Tyrese Maxey, there's a James Bouknight. For every Tyrese Maxey, there's a Bones Highland. There's so little margin for error. The smaller you are, the thinner your margin for error is. And so with Dillingham, it could be really difficult.
Maxey was a freak athlete. He plays with force. Those aren't really things that Dillingham has. So.
The thing that I like about Dillingham is I think he's the best ball handler in the class. The guy, like I said, he can get anywhere he wants on the court. I think that'll translate. I don't know, does he have all-star potential, or does he have sixth man of the year potential? And, is he Malik Monk, or is he De'Aaron Fox? I don't really know. But
yeah,
if I'm picking him, or if I'm him and I'm picking my landing spot, I'm going to San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, Monk's a great name to throw out there. I mean, he just, obviously signed that extension, but his real leap came, okay, yes, had to become more comfortable and confident and consistent from three, but becoming a legitimate passer, somebody that you can run offense through for others, is what took Monk from being, a mid-level minimum, what is he going to be in the league, what team he's going to be on kind of guy, to somebody that is getting a real extension and a team's making commitment to. So maybe it's passing. Maybe that's part of his growth, and that's how Maxey's kind of developed. We should mention too,
this guy might not get taken in the lottery. Like, there are some reports of him potentially falling, but just according to ESPN's big board, he was up next. So,
all right, next up, number 9, Tidjane Salaun. Wes, I'm gonna make an executive decision here. I'm trading myself down to 10 because I don't know enough about this guy to pick a spot for him, so I'm passing him to you. And I'm gonna go with Nikola Topic, who is number 10 on Gavoni's board. We can negotiate what's going each way on that trade that I just made up. But
right, so if we're trading players and not picks, I want Zach Edey coming back or something.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, perfect. We'll top off the Sunday here with a little bit of Edey talk, and you can pick where he goes. That'll be some extra content for you to feel good about. Okay, Topic. So Nikola Topic, we've had Zach Cohen on of Real GM the past few weeks heading into the draft, and Topic is his guy. He obviously has this knee injury that is keeping him out, and I've seen people, reference it as kind of like treat it as if maybe he won't play this whole season and then be happy if he does, and you can get something out of it. But to me, it's like a lot of these teams here in the lottery, why do I care if he's going to be gone for a year, Mm-hmm. Next draft's great. A lot of these teams are tanking and rebuilding. I know not everybody has the stomach for getting 0 from their lottery pick, but a lot of teams, frankly, should be able to handle that. So where I'm going to go here, I think I'm going to go with the Thunder.
Wow. Okay.
Did I take it? I took them. I know that's kind of well. Hold on. Let me double check the possibilities.
It makes a lot of sense.
We have Atlanta left,
though. Yeah.
We have Atlanta left. Is Houston still on the board?
Correct.
We have another Portland.
Yep.
Detroit.
Yep.
And then Oklahoma City.
And I think we still have Charlotte and Chicago.
Well, I use Chicago for
You did use
Knecht.
Chicago, and they only have the one pick. Okay.
And right. Charlotte, you just used for Castle. Or no, we were talking about him for Castle.
Yeah,
you didn't use
him
for
Washington.
Castle.
Washington is Castle.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm honestly even going through it again. I'm gonna stick with Oklahoma City. I mean, they brought Vasilija Micic last year, right? We know that at the end of games, a lot of their issue was paint would get clogged if they couldn't put enough shooting out there, and teams were playing off of Holmgren and, some of their other guys despite the percentages looking good. And they got Caruso. That doesn't really address that issue. They have the patience because they're already a very good team to have Topic just, recover, maybe go play some G League games. They use that program a lot and get some reps there. And then, even if the season after that he's still not a contributor at a high level, maybe he's somebody who is just kind of in their back pocket as they figure out what the rest of this roster is going to look like when it gets more expensive. So they need another creator. They need another kind of pick and roll orchestrator who can create a shot, and he's that. So I'm going to stick with it.
I really like it. I was a little worried about it at first because it was like, didn't we just do this with Josh Giddey? But I think Topic is a little bit more skilled in terms of getting to the rim and things like that.
Yeah.
But they're similar size, similar sort of pass over the top height and vision stuff, similar issues defensively. But to your point earlier, if you're a lottery team and you could take Topic and just say, you know what, we're trying to be bad anyway and we're really gunning for the 2025 draft, then it does kind of make sense to get a guy who's on a redshirt year that doesn't risk making your team better than what you want to be. But the other side of that is Oklahoma City, where you don't even need him because you're already really good. So it's just sort of like this bonus guy that you can have a year or two from now. You're absolutely right. They need another creator. There's a world where he develops into a pick-and-roll orchestrator and could even play with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They don't really have a backup point guard on the roster that they trust and they feel great about. Can he become that? They like guys with size, with good feel, with ball handling. He checks a lot of the Oklahoma City boxes that they usually are trying to check. And if you're him and you're picking the team, then you do want somewhere that is a stable organization that you trust, that could be patient with you as you come back from this injury, that might not need you right away. I guess the downside would be, well, eventually I want to run my own team, and that's probably never going to happen in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think it's a good pick considering everybody else that's on the board, because like Utah can make some sense for him, but they're off the board, right? Like and between all the teams out there, Oklahoma City is the one that makes the most sense. So I like it.
He's gotten mocked to the Jazz quite a bit, so maybe that's what ends up happening on draft night. But as far as the Giddey comp, I also feel like, at least at this moment, having just played professionally overseas and not yet in any NBA time, it maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like people evaluate his likelihood to be able to shoot at the NBA level a little bit ahead of where Giddey was. He has this weird thing where, he has the ball, so some of his threes are off the bounce, but he also, his percentages have kind of fluctuated year by year, but his free throw percentage is like beyond elite. He's shooting like close to 90% from the free throw line, which is always a good indicator for 3-point success over time. So, I'm not going to pretend I've watched him a ton to have a good, intricate scouting report on like if he's going to shoot threes, but it feels a little more likely than it was with Giddey, where even with Giddey back then, it kind of felt like it's probably not going to happen. Like there was almost no chance of it, whereas with Topic, you could see it coming.
And we act here like Josh Giddey wasn't a helpful player for Oklahoma City for the first 3 years of his career. He was a really helpful player for this team. He was part of one of the best starting fives in the league. The problem with Giddey in Oklahoma City was eventually he got played off the floor in the playoffs, sure, but also he's up for an extension. And they don't want to pay him what he's going to cost. I think they were fine paying him what he did cost. I don't think that they regret that pick even a little bit. So it's almost like in the NFL where the running back kind of gets priced out and then you let him go and then you draft a new running back. That's kind of what Oklahoma City would be doing here with Topic is, all right, we this worked with Giddey and we don't need him anymore. We don't want to pay him, but we can get another Giddey on a rookie scale salary. And I'm with you. The comparisons are not one for one, but I'm just saying if we even go down that path, there are some of the same limitations to both of their games too. But I think this guy could really help them, and so I have no problem with the pick. And that puts me back on the board with Salaun. I'm just gonna send him to wait. Who do we put? No, this works. Portland. We still have a Portland pick, right?
Yep.
I'm putting him in Portland. It just feels like that's another team that is going to be bad for another couple of years. Salaun is a little bit of a project, but it feels like everybody they have is a project, so he fits right in, and everybody could just sort of be projects together. And I like the pick there. I like the fit there, too, because they currently have Jeremy Grant at power forward. Right now, is he gone by the start of the season? Is he there in February and gone by the trade deadline? If that's the case, if the latter is what actually happens there, if I'm Salaun, then I get like a few months to just sort of figure it out before getting thrust into the starting lineup potentially. But yeah, I like that everybody around me is just sort of a project, and that's an organization that almost has to be patient for right now. So I'll send myself to Portland.
Okay, so it's brutally realistic that the teams that are left, just in terms of organizations and where teams would want to go.
Yeah.
Atlanta, Charlotte, Detroit. I keep forgetting. We still haven't used Houston. Correct?
Houston's still on board. So we have Atlanta, Houston, Detroit, and Charlotte left.
So Houston we should probably, like, if I'm on the phone with my agent, if I'm in the green room and this weird exercise became reality and I'm calling and saying, get me to Houston. But I'm not going to go there with my next pick. Actually, I'm finally going to get the actual number 1 overall pick team a player here, which is Cody Williams.
Yep.
It would be fun if he ended up on the Thunder in real life because they're brothers, him and J-Dub, but no such luck. And I don't really think that they need Cody Williams, frankly. So I would actually be a little bummed if that's what it ended up being. If I'm Cody Williams, despite playing with my brother, they have a lot of guys like me, including one who is Jalen. So in Atlanta, I don't know if they're keeping Trae Young, but I can tell you that a team that has a player like Williams, player like Jalen Johnson, some options at center, which I would assume will include a Kongwu and probably somebody else that they get this offseason if they move off Capella. That's what you want to be doing, Big guys who can at least shoot enough, get out and transition a little bit, protect Trae on defense. And honestly, frankly, if Trae Young's not there, I would still love to be there because that just becomes a team that's kind of being morphed in a new image. I still get to play next to Jalen Johnson, be part of a more modern kind of construction of what this group could look like, get a lot of opportunities to shoot. So I think that's perfect. They have DeAndre Hunter, elephant in the room, I guess, there, but they kind of want to move him. He's already been paid. He's not part of their future. So I'm their future starting 3, and I would love that.
It's a no-brainer. If you're Cody Williams, you have an opportunity to walk in right away and you get a chance to develop into a star. And if you think your upside is star potential, which obviously Cody Williams does think that based on some of the interviews and stuff like that he's given, then you want an opportunity to prove it. And I think in Atlanta, you would have that opportunity. And they do have players, whether it's Trae Young and DeJounte Murray are just one of those guys that can handle the ball handling stuff. So you're not the guy that's having to create on the ball. You have somebody else on the roster who's an advantage creator, and you kind of attack second side, weak side, off the flow of whatever the offense is doing and stuff like that, which is probably going to be what he's limited to offensively, and then defensively, you already hit it. He can cover up for all the things that they need. And I'm not really worried about the competition there on the wing. I like Jalen Johnson. He's a little bit bigger, probably plays a different position than me.
Yep.
I'm not worried about DeAndre Hunter. I'm not worried about Griffin. I'm not worried about anybody else there. I feel like I can walk in and basically be the guy at the 3 pretty much right away.
I know people have talked about, obviously, again, Jalen Williams just naturally being the comp there. I look at, and I know they're not the same height, but I look at Jaden McDaniels a lot.
Exactly. Yep.
Because in one particular way, which is that one of the big knocks on Jaden is that he kind of ended up playing a little bit of a smaller role, making less of an impact when he got to college versus the hype coming out of high school. And obviously Cody Williams came off the bench most of the season and everything. And he was a little timid, didn't really kind of take games take games over and everything. But Jaden McDaniels, you would have said all the same things about. It took him a bit. He landed in a situation where he was on a good team that made sense, where he fit in. And yes, him being timid is still one of the knocks on Jaden. If he was a really dominant, aggressive offensive player, the Wolves would be way better. And they are in the games when he chooses to play that way. So that's still there. But he just looks awesome all of a sudden. Just got damn near a max. And you're not worried about a lot of those knocks anymore. I think Cody Williams could be exactly like that. And, the nature of this draft is Jaden went in the late first round. You have to pick him in like the top 10 probably here, but you could probably feel just as good as the Wolves do about him. So to me, he's being really undervalued.
I agree. It's a perfect comp. And I think when we try to judge these guys too, these guys fall, and I get it. If you're picking at the top of the draft, you do kind of want a 1A or somebody with that potential. I don't really see that for Cody Williams. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's also a lot of value in the Jaden McDaniels kinds of guys. There's a lot of value, especially if you're a team like Atlanta that already has your 1A and maybe also your 1B, depending on what they do with this backcourt, where we really don't need that guy. What we need is a Jaden McDaniels type. We kind of need the Scottie Pippen to our Jordan. We kind of need that. And so I like the fit generally, and they won't take him at number 1, but Cody Williams would love to be there. Number whatever, Devin Carter. That's who we have left here, right? So,
yep.
Houston, Detroit, Charlotte. It feels like I'm gonna go Houston here.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go Houston. Ime Udoka is a defensive first coach. I think we're gonna get along over that kind of stuff. I don't need to be good right away because they still have Fred VanVleet, and for now they still have Jalen Green. If Jalen Green is indeed part of the future in Houston, I make a lot of sense next to him in that backcourt. He's the offensive guy. I can cover up for everything defensively. Fred VanVleet could be gone in a year because of the team option on that contract, or if not, maybe it's only a couple years and I'm just sort of the backup guard in waiting there. I know Houston thinks that Asar Thompson might be able, or Amen Thompson might be their point guard of the future. I'm a little dubious that that's ever really going to happen. That feels like a little galaxy brain to me. Sometimes I just want a guy, but even if he is, Devin Carter is more of those, like, he's more of like a Stephon Castle, like a combo guard kind of guy. Probably the best perimeter defender in the draft. If you don't get your wish and get Marcus Smart, then you get Devin Carter if you're Houston, then I guess that's fine. So if I'm Devin Carter, I'm going to Houston.
Yeah, I want to be on a team that can win now. I want to be on a team that wants to play defense. I want to be on a team where I don't have to be the point guard. All of those things apply to the Rockets. Maybe you worry you're getting a little bit boxed out of just because they have so many different options, but here you are at the end of the lottery. You don't always get your pick. That's what happens. So, okay, number 13, Ron Holland. We have Detroit and Charlotte left. If I'm Ron Holland, I'm looking at Asar Thompson and I'm saying I don't want to be on the same team as that man because we are too similar and we both don't really shoot. So I'm going to go to the Charlotte Hornets.
Yep.
I'm going to slot in next to Brandon Miller. I know you and Chris hammered the shooting side of things for the Hornets offseason wise. I'm just crossing my fingers. They sign some of those guys or acquire them other ways. It starts to get a little dicey when it's like a 4. Maybe I'm the 4. Mark Williams is out there with me. LaMelo has the ball, so his shooting isn't really activated because he's not off. It can get worrisome, but given the options, I don't want to be on the Pistons, so I'm picking the Hornets.
Are we sure this doesn't happen in real life? Charlotte's picking at 6. Ron Holland's value is all over the place. Like, some people still have him with a top 5 evaluation. I know John Hollinger just wrote that he's his top player in the draft. He was in the
all
mix as the
all
top
the
player in
nerd
the draft
types
too.
love Holland. That's definitely,
I'm right
he's a
there, I
freak.
guess. Yeah, I'm in it. I love Ron Holland. I love the motor. I love all this stuff. I think that a new coach like Charles Lee would really like to have a guy like Ron Holland. And if you're trying to play fast with LaMelo Ball, you're trying to push the tempo and stuff, sign Ron Holland up. He's perfect in a system like that where he's just running down the floor, dunking, filling the lane, all that kind of stuff. Defensively, he does a lot of things that you like there. And if you've already got Brandon Miller, then I think you want probably that second wing. You're looking for the Jaylen Brown to Brandon Miller's Jason Tatum. And I make that comparison on purpose because Lee obviously came from the Celtics. And so I think Ron Holland just makes a ton of sense for that team. And it wouldn't be shocked. It would be a reach based on where Holland is on the ESPN board. But I don't know what it would be a reach based on the way that some front offices value Ron Holland with the Hornets picking at 6. I love this fit.
Not at all. I mean, it would not be a reach at all. I mean, I know you mentioned John Hollinger feeling that way, but I mean, because this draft got so wonky over the course of the season, it is easy to forget Holland was a player we thought could go first overall back in September of last year. He was that level of recruit. Went to Ignite. That system probably, or that situation probably really hurt him. And, the lack of offensive tools makes people just kind of nervous, but the athleticism, the force that he plays with, how hard he plays, the motor, all of that is there. Turnover creation is there. Transition moments are there. We had Norris Cole on the podcast a few months ago, and he was raving about Holland. Of course, he's a gentleman, a politician. He's not going to compare the two, but I will tell you, reading between the lines of that interview, pretty positive he felt better about Holland and Buzelis himself. So I think he's another guy that could really hit. If you can get anything out of the jumper, or at the very least, coach ways for him to stay on the court without a jumper, which plenty of players can do in the modern NBA, despite how much we rely on that shot, you're getting a really, really big difference maker. So, yeah, if he falls to I mean, even if you don't see a reach at 6 and some team gobbles him up in this range, honestly, even better, because those teams kind of need him less. So it'll just be a cooler fit when it all comes to pass. But we only got one left, and then you can do your Edey thing.
It's Jacoby Walter is the 14th player on ESPN's board. And you were talking about one of your favorite drafts of all time a little earlier, the 2013 draft.
Mm-hmm.
The number 8 pick in the 2013 draft was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, taken by the Detroit Pistons as a 3-and-D player. Jacoby Walter compared a lot to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I know Detroit is the only team left on the board, and I don't have a choice here. But if I'm Jacoby Walter, I am thrilled to go to the Detroit Pistons, because if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's career ended up being great, not because he was picked by the Pistons, he ended up winning a championship with the Lakers and the Nuggets later on in his career, but it did start with the Pistons. And if I'm Jacoby Walter, then I'm like, all right, I can just follow the same exact blueprint. I can follow the same exact template. I'm going to the Pistons. Obviously, they have a need for him too, as one of maybe their only good perimeter defender when he walks into the door outside of Ausar Thompson. So,
yeah,
and Thompson's more of a forward, where Walter's more of a backcourt guy. So that works. All right, Zach Edey, I guess, is the trade that we did is still confusing. What do I do? I could just pick any team that's left?
Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating.
You're welcome. See, I was thinking ahead. This is a great opportunity for you. I'm so glad.
Yeah, would it be just oof.
How do you like him on the Heat?
Let's just do it. I'm picking the Heat if I'm Zach Edey. So we just did on our Locked On Heat show, we did a draft simulation, and we ended up picking Zach Edey at 15. And I think he's actually I think that's a real option for Miami there. I like the fit. I'm higher on Edey than I think a lot of people are, and I do think he's going to end up being picked in the top 15 of the draft. It wouldn't shock me if he was picked in the lottery, simply because of this. It's really hard to find humans this big, especially humans with legitimate basketball skills. Elite touch in the paint, good free throw shooter, elite foul drawer, great motor, well-conditioned. And that's the thing. I like the fit for the Heat if I'm Edey too, because that's a team that puts a premium on conditioning. Edey, people think that he's like some bad athlete. The guy's an elite athlete, right? Not like a run jump athlete, but played like 35 to 40 minutes every game in the NCAA tournament.
Played
really
hockey as a kid,
played hockey,
like
baseball,
probably speaks to
things.
it. Yep.
So I think that there's a lot of stuff there to work with. It's a classic, tell me what he can do, not what he can't do. And the one thing he can do, rebound, free throws, shoot in the paint, be really big, rim protect, all those things. And the one thing he can't do, though, is when he gets out onto the perimeter, is guard on the perimeter. He is slow-footed. It is an issue. It was on there on the tape in college. It will be there even more at the NBA level. That is a real concern. What do you need then behind him? You need somebody like Bam Adebayo, don't you? Who is an elite help side defender when he's allowed to play that position, can clean up everything behind me if I'm Zach Edey that I let go. And that part of my game looks a lot less bad. It's a little bit like what Giannis is able to do for Brook Lopez. And if Bam could do that for Zach Edey, I think it would be a great fit there. So if I'm Edey, I'm going to Miami.
All right. I love it. Let's recap. And I'm going to need your help here.
Oh, I've got it all written down. Let's do it.
Great.
Okay, so we've got Risacher goes to Portland. We've got Alex Sarr going to Sacramento. Donovan Clingan goes to Memphis. Reed Sheppard goes to Utah. Matas Buzelis goes to San Antonio. Stephon Castle is going to Washington. Dalton Knecht goes to Chicago. Rob Dillingham goes to San Antonio. Tidjane Salaun goes to Portland. I'm sorry that I'm butchering these names. Nikola Topic goes to Oklahoma City. Cody Williams to Atlanta. Devin Carter to Houston. Ron Holland to Charlotte. And Jacoby Walter to Detroit. And Zach Edey to Miami.
That was fun. It actually is, we talk so much about fit in the draft. It's fun to flip it around and think, and we're probably still getting a lot of them wrong, but what would be the optimal place if the players could pick? And
Free
like
market,
I said,
baby. Let's go.
organization-wise, I think we were in the right ballpark there too. That matters. We're hearing it with Sarr right now. He's kind of playing hardball with the Hawks. He probably would be a lot of people's first overall pick, but the Hawks are just nervous if he doesn't want to be there and he's not going to show them what he has in his game. And everybody has to send medicals now with the new CBA, but everything short of that, it feels like Sarr is doing. So we're kind of seeing it play out in real time. All right. Takes. Each of us has one. I will start us off. And we're going to go back to the 2013 draft once again.
Wow, we got a theme here.
We got a theme. My take is this will not look as bad as the 2013 draft in 11 years as 2013 looks to us now, because I think teams are better at drafting than they were then, and we can debate if that's true or not. And B, I think that more importantly, the league has a better idea of what it is. Teams know what they should be going and getting better than they did in 2013. If you think back to 2013, we were right in the middle of that, Heatles era. The Spurs were really good. The Warriors were getting good, about to be really good. The Pacers were kind of this fluke thing. The Thunder couldn't get over the hump because they were kind of stuck in the past. And you can kind of see that in the draft, right? It's like Cody Zeller goes fourth. That's just not... It immediately became a type of player that wasn't going to function in the modern NBA. Ben McLemore. Okay, shooter, yes, but couldn't really do much besides that and was really, really small. Trey Burke. CJ McCollum, against all odds, I probably easily, if he didn't hit, I would say his name as an example, but he did hit, so okay, exception to the rule there. That's kind of takes us through the lottery, but I guess I just look now, and maybe Edey will kind of end up being an example of that, or Dillingham or whatever. Not, you can't always paint with such a broad brush, but that's kind of my thought is, even just doing that exercise, how many of those guys were wings and guys with feel and guys who have size, and you can at least envision how they're going to fit into the modern NBA. And even over the course of the season, despite it being a bad draft, you saw guys slip that we maybe had high hopes for because, Collier, if he's not going to be able to shoot and he has kind of an inconsistent, approach offensively, he's now falling. I think we have an idea of where the target is a lot better in the NBA than we did then. And so that'll make this whole thing not as crushing as that draft was for a lot of the teams at the top.
Yeah, it felt like the Cavs just drafted Anthony Bennett because they saw one box score, right? They were like,
yep.
Oh, yeah, this guy plays power forward and he shot a couple of threes. We're going to take that guy because we think that's where the league is going. And it was sort of the right idea, but it was wrongly executed. And I think if
those space fours, I should have said him, because you're exactly right. Those Ryan Anderson type guys, and I know he is a little more athletic than that, of course, but that died. You had to be able to do a lot more than that.
I think if we were to do a redraft of 2013, having the same information we had then, so not knowing that Giannis might be the greatest player of all time, right? Not knowing that Anthony Bennett was a complete bust and just didn't have what it took. Having the exact same information we had then, Otto Porter Jr., instead of being number 3, goes number 1, right? Two-way wing, just goes. He's like the Risacher of that draft. He goes number 1. You probably get more of a run. Like Nerlens Noel, even though it didn't work out for him, probably goes higher. I know there were some injury concerns there, but there's such a premium for those run and jump centers over guys like Alex Len and Cody Zeller who went in front of him. I think KCP probably goes higher. I think a guy like Giannis, even though he went 15, there's more like of a temperament to take these guys higher in the draft now, because like a Tidjane Salaun guy, like a Buzelis kind of guy. He's really toolsy, right? And he's 6'10", he's 6'11", and he runs like a gazelle, and we just think that could work. And if it doesn't work, oh well. At least we took a shot. And back then, like, you look at these top players, we were still very much in the sort of play it safe mode of the Cody Zellers, Alex Lenz, Trey Burke, who at Michigan basically was just a traditional captain point guard who was taken number 9, one pick ahead of CJ McCollum, who's more of the kind of guard that you see taken high in the draft now, coming out of college as more of a combo kind of scoring guy who could put points up. So, yeah.
I mean, if you were to show teams on, June 1st of 2013, heading into that pre-draft process, tape of how Steve Kerr was going to have the Warriors play, how Mike Budenholzer was going to have the Hawks play, how, the Cavs were going to be playing when LeBron got there, just 2 years later, I think a lot of what you're talking about starts to flip. It was just this inflection point era-wise and style-wise that I think just as much as the lack of talent, which obviously is the biggest problem with that draft, but that's also, I think, why it's aged so poorly. And I don't think we really have that right now. The Boston Celtics just won the championship. We all know what you got to do, and it's about how do you build your version of that and your roster and maximize it. But nobody's sitting there thinking, even if they draft Zach Edey, for instance, or Dillingham, for instance, that guy's going to be our best player. Whereas, somebody probably thought Cody Zeller could be, or Trey Burke was about to, really be awesome, and they just weren't, right away.
Yeah, also just a little funny note, there was no conversations about whether or not Cody Zeller could shoot the three. Going into this draft, and 11 years later, it's like, can Donovan Clingan shoot threes? Can Zach Edey shoot threes? And we've almost gone too far in that direction where it's literally not everybody on your roster has to shoot threes.
And a lot of the guys
things that happen on the basketball court that these guys could help with, but it's
a lot of the guys who fell also, I think, that it kind of speaks to the same thing. You have in the later part of that draft, Tony Snell, and you got Solomon Hill and Tim Hardaway Jr., Reggie Bullock, Andre Robertson. Alan Crabb is in the second round, and those guys played. Now, that happens in a lot of drafts where the later players end up having 6-year careers, whereas some of the other guys at the top have 2-year careers. We kind of know how that works, but I think that that kind of illustrates the same point. So, all right, there's my take.
Good take.
What do you got for us?
Here's mine. The Atlanta Hawks would be absolutely crazy to take Zacharie Risacher with the number 1 pick, and the obvious choice is Donovan Clingan. And I think it's going to happen. This Risacher thing, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's just everybody has him at number 1 on their mock draft because he's the safe guy. He's got the size. He can shoot threes. He plays good defense, at least off the ball. But that's it. I don't see it with him. Here's the scouting report from from Jay Billis on ESPN.com. He says, who has him number 1 on his board? And this is what he writes about him. While not primarily a playmaker, averaging less than 1 assist per game, Risacher is a low-turnover wing who was named this year's Euro Cup Rising Star. Risacher has the length to be a capable defender, but does not have jaw-dropping athletic skills, finishing in the bottom quartile of the sprint and vertical leap at this year's draft. So you're going to tell me that a guy who doesn't turn the ball over because he doesn't handle the ball, so that's I don't care that if he doesn't turn, you don't have it. If you don't have an opportunity to turn
and
the
he
ball
never
over,
will.
I'm not
right?
impressive, right? A guy who is a below average athlete with zero potential to be a lead creator on your team, that guy's going number 1. And I understand it's not a strong draft, and I get it. But we're talking about a guy with absolutely zero potential to be a 1A on a good team. Miss me with that, dude. Miss me. Maybe it makes more sense at 4, 5, 6, 7, but with the number 1 pick, I am not doing it. Here's the other thing with Atlanta, and it's why Clingan is the obvious pick. Even if Clingan I don't think is the best player in this draft, he's the obvious pick for them. Atlanta, 27th in defensive rating last year, 22nd in defensive rating the previous season. They stink, right? They can't stop a nosebleed. They can't do anything. Opponents shot 67% against them at the rim. That was 19th in the league, according to Cleaning in the Glass. They have no long-term answer at center, right? Clint Capella's probably out of there. Think what you want of Onyeka Okongwu. He hasn't exactly panned out at that spot. Clingan is going to walk in the NBA. He's going to be able to rebound. He could switch. He can get out on the perimeter a little bit defensively. There's offensive upside with him. And here's the best part about Clingan. He's 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan. He fixes all of that stuff. And we already know Quinn Snyder knows how to use guys like Clingan, because the guy that Clingan gets compared to is Rudy Gobert. And I bet you Quinn Snyder would love to have a guy that was very similar to Rudy Gobert to fix all these concerns defensively, where the Utah Jazz, despite being shorthanded at a lot of their other positions defensively, were always top 10 in defense because they had a guy like Rudy Gobert anchoring the paint. And you could put Clingan in there and basically just solve your position at center for the long term. Whether or not you have Trae Young and DeJounte Murray or one of those guys, they both make sense as a pick-and-roll partner with Donovan Clingan. It is crazy to me that every mock draft out there has Risacher at number 1. They would be absolutely nuts to pick him there. It would be a huge mistake. They should obviously go with Donovan Clingan, and I just think that that's what's going to happen because I think it's that obvious, and we're just missing it.
Yeah, you could absolutely be right. I mean, that could very well be what happens. I will say if you've heard Jonathan Givony on any podcast this week, he has the Risacher kind of pitch down to a nice flourish, which feels, as somebody who went through DeAndre Ayton getting drafted here number 1 overall in 2018, I recognize when the tone tells you what you might not want to know or might not be ready to embrace. So I do think there's a decent chance that the Hawks do just take him. The athleticism is exactly why I would not do it. I want, if at all possible, unless the player is a freak, basketball mind creator like Doncic or Jokic or some of those guys, I want them to have above average athleticism, if at all possible. And it is possible, even in this week's draft. There's options that they have that would check that box. So it too low of a ceiling by a mile. The only part of your take that I will push back on is, why should the Hawks not just take Sarr and say, I don't care if you don't want to be here. You're the highest. You're the player that could make us feel the best in 3 years. And that's what the number 1 pick is supposed to be all about. And you're telling us you want to go to the Wizards? You want to go to the Wizards. That's what you would rather choose? We'll convince you. We have a great coach who has experience with international players. We have opportunities for you to flourish. We don't exactly have a deep rotation. We're probably not that far away from a rebuild. You're coming to Atlanta. Deal with it.
I wish they would just call his bluff and take him. But I said this the last time with you. Your number 1 job as a front office general manager is not to build the best team. Your first job is to keep the job. And if you draft Alex Sarr and there's some sort of rookie holdout situation and this goes in a disastrous way, you lose your job. And I do think that there's something to be said about taking the safe pick, which is probably why so many people have Risacher going there and why he is in the mix at that spot. But you kind of get the best of both worlds, I guess, with Clingan, with a guy who actually makes sense for your roster. I also am not as high as Sarr, and I might look stupid for this as other people. I would take Sarr over Risacher still, but there's a little bit of Karl Anthony Towns to his game where you're like, it looks like it should all work, and then you watch him and you're just like, why doesn't this all come together? Why am I more frustrated watching him than I'm like excited coming away from the tape on him? So whatever, but I am with you though. If you're the Hawks and you think Sarr is the guy, like that, I don't know why we've just been like, oh, he hasn't worked out with us, we're not going to take him. I think that has to be at least in consideration. But I just like Clingan a little bit more than Sarr, honestly, and that's kind of why I have him there. I like 5 guys more than Risacher I would take 5 guys at number 1 over Risacher.
Okay,
I could do the list. We can make this the list. Okay, I would take Sarr. I would take Clingan. I would take Castle. I would take Devin Carter over him. I would take Ron Holland over Risacher. And I wouldn't blink. I wouldn't think twice. And I might look really dumb in a couple of years when Risacher is an all-star, but I really feel pretty good about this. I feel really good about this.
Look, I mean, the smart people who pay attention to this stuff all year and really lock in have Risacher 9th. Kevin O'Connor has him 9th. Sam Vecini has him 5th at The Athletic. Like, the way I think of the ESPN thing, because we obviously did him first on this exercise because he's first on ESPN's board, I've always felt like Gavoni's approach with this is kind of a consensus, more of a reported big board. And so, and there's been years where that definitely speaks through when you hear him and or Mike Schmitz, when he used to be there, talk about it. So I'm not even positive using the ESPN board to say, well, this very prominent place has him first. I'm not even sure I buy that. I think not a lot of.
I'm sorry. I think it's based off of a lot of you're right. The reporting is there, and you're asking other front offices what you think is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the snowball effect of these mock drafts is, well, every front office is looking at the same mock drafts that we're looking at, and every mock draft has Risacher there, so their own internal mock drafts also have Risacher there. So that's sort of what happened again.
And then he just becomes the first guy,
right,
whether the analysis is there or not. Yeah.
And then the Magic take Paolo Banchero over Jabari Smith, right? Because Jabari Smith was never the guy, but every mock draft just had him there, and it just sort of piles on.
But that actually is that draft is a great example of how you should check yourself if you have that pick. It doesn't always have to be the first overall pick, but if you have a really interesting decision where you could go with consensus or against consensus, or you could go with what makes sense or what might be a little bit out of the box. If the team right after you wouldn't take the guy that you're letting go, you probably shouldn't take that guy either. And in that Orlando draft, the Thunder were taking Chet no matter what. They would not have taken Jabari, and they didn't, if the Magic went with Paolo, right? They might have taken maybe they might have taken Chet over Paolo also because it was more of a fit thing, but I think they would have had to think twice. That should have told the Magic all that they needed to know. That's why I always felt like they were going to take Paolo. It's like, I don't really think a lot of people have Jabari Smith as the best prospect. It feels like that rumor just kind of got cooked up and we just went with it. But no one analyzing this stuff had Jabari Smith Jr. as the best player in that class, so why would he go number one? It's kind of how I feel with Risacher. It's like nobody that knows their stuff here that we're seeing publicly thinks he's the best player. That should be enough to make us second guess that will actually happen. So, yeah, I mean, Sarr, Klingan, I think both would make sense. That rounds out the top three on ESPN. Those are our first three guys here, so I would get it. But, yeah, I hope it's not Risacher. For his sake, too, We didn't pick the Hawks for him.
Right.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
I agree.
All right.
Personal
we got any food things? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Soup question mark? I had something different, but you brought up soup. Well, you didn't, but
soup's boring because I live in Arizona. We're not soup people here.
Hot?
There's like 3 months we can eat soup and have it be pleasant. So yeah.
So
what was your original?
I live in South Florida, and for very much the same reason, soup just doesn't work here most of the year. I am not a soup person. To me, it is. You use the right word. Boring. We're anti-soup here on the show. I bet Chris is more soup.
Probably.
Friendly.
He'd be the expert. Yeah.
Since he's in Cleveland, it does get cold there. That he's north of the Mason-Dixon line, so I would imagine that soup is something that could even be consumed at like a sports bar or something in those kind of parts. But I really don't enjoy it. It's just the same thing, spoonful after spoonful. But I don't. Do you consider chili a soup?
I mean, if I had to classify it, I would say it's soup, but it's almost. I mean, it's not really liquidy, It's
right.
It's like you eat it in a bowl, you eat it with the soup with a spoon. So sure, it kind of looks like a soup, so you call it a soup, but no. I think chili can involve a tortilla.
When you have a cook-off named after you,
it.
It's a chili cook-off, right? It's not a soup cook-off. It's its own thing now. So I think chili is very separate, and I enjoy chili quite a bit. And that's the other part. I don't like soup, and I do like chili. So I know that chili isn't soup.
Yeah, some rearranging of the A plus B plus C stuff to get you back to the original answer. I like it. Okay, did you have another question? Was there an original that you had marked down here?
That one's good.
Okay,
I think soup's fine.
Yeah. No. If I had to pick a soup that I've had that I like the most, I mean, if I'm on the East Coast in that more north part, again, like in an area where it actually makes sense, some kind of chowder, probably. Clam chowder, seafood chowder. I guess broccoli cheese soup is a little similar. Something a little thicker and creamier is what I'm going to lean toward if I have to. So
even chowder is sort of on that chili or soup border. It's kind of like on the fence there. I do enjoy a clam chowder quite a bit. So if I had to pick a soup, I like a wonton soup at a Chinese restaurant. but that's more of like a palate cleanser. Those are the kinds of things I like.
It's like
a
water.
gazpacho
It's
count?
it's a drink really there.
Right. Yeah. I kind of like that kind of thing. I'll eat like a lentil soup every once in a while. I don't mind that, but I've got to be in the mood.
It's just also a weird thing to order at a restaurant.
People who order soup at restaurants, or there's two kinds of people in this world. There's people who order soup at restaurants, and there's people who don't. And it's a very weird order. Soup at a restaurant.
It can get really messy.
Unless
it's such a whole
that
show
comes before the meal. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's really hard to talk and eat soup at the same time because you do have to do
everybody's just watching you. You're just sitting,
have to bend
it's
over
like this
a little bit.
Yeah. You're moving so much. You're being so careful. It's hot. It's steaming. You're blowing on it. It's like open up a can of something at home. That's it. Yeah, it's easier to not. All right. Okay, draft night's here. Hopefully nothing happens before this episode posts, but we'll just we'll leave that there. All right, hit follow, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back Friday morning with a recap of everything. We got 2 days of this whole draft now, so we'll let them both play out. Zach Cohen of Real GM will come back, join Chris and I we'll probably do winners and losers. That's how I like to talk about the draft. Chris and I did that last year. That worked really well. So winners and losers Friday morning in your feed. Don't go anywhere. Enjoy the draft in the meantime, and we'll catch you Friday.